All right. So with that, I am getting ready to bring on our guest, and then I will introduce her. So let me invite her here to the studio. Oops. Add to stream. Here we go. Laura. Yay. Okay. So here's what we are going to do. I'm going to introduce my guest really quickly, and then we are going to jump in. So Laura Gentry, who it feels like I've known for absolutely ever. And I will post her full bio so you have it in the show notes. But I'm just going to read a couple of things. Since 99, LAG Productions, which is her production company, LAG Productions LLC has produced and promoted jazz events inclusive of small club venues, performing arts centers, festivals, and concert series in the Greater Cincinnati, Ohio, Northern Kentucky, and Southeastern Indiana area. She is the president of the nonprofit organization Jazz Alive. She serves as committee chair for the Jazz Initiative of Cincinnati and the Sister City Association with France. She is a council member for We Create Jazz, and this is what I love. We Create Jazz, which is an initiative for, by, and about women in jazz with the University of Cincinnati-College Conservatory of Music Jazz Studies Department. She also founded, and I was going to wear my shirt with the logo this morning, and I couldn't find it, which means it's somewhere in my laundry. She founded Sistahs Who Swing, which is a concept focusing on African-American women in jazz. Laura, woo-woo! I'm so glad you're here. Yay! So this is going to be awesome. So guys, I brought Laura here. She was traveling actually to look at some places she was going to be promoting, and she was coming through Houston. She's like, I found out Houston's an hour away. Are you going to be home? And so we got to hang out earlier this month. And as we were talking, I was like, I need to have you on the show because what she has done in her career, what she has done about her passion around jazz, how she has combined the two, how she also is educating musicians on the business of music, people. Just like when we talk about athletes, right? They make all this money. Nobody's talking to them about how to manage their business. All of this stuff she's done ties right into what we talk about here at the Rutledge Perspective. How you show up, how you mind your business, how you think about your career and the choices you make. So Laura, I want to jump in first by telling people kind of what you do, your day job, and then this other stuff. So maybe give people a background.
Well, I've been an accountant for 33 years.
Uh-huh.
I've been a promoter for 22 years. Mm-hmm. And after about 10 years of being an accountant, I thought there is something else.
Yeah.
I was always involved in the arts growing up. I had to go back to that to find something that gave me more fulfillment in my life instead of just going to work every day.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, counting the beans.
Right.
And I had the privilege of having two parents that were great music lovers and jazz lovers. So that's what I heard growing up, especially my father. Mm-hmm. And I had to go back to that to find some happiness for myself. And that gave me some direction about what can I do.
Yeah.
That's kind of the short story for where I started.
Yeah.
But it has evolved a lot.
Yes.
Over 22 years. And that's another point that, as I talk about things that we talked about, finding fulfillment and a sense of accomplishment in something outside of your career. Mm-hmm. And you can do that with your career.
Absolutely.
But where are you in terms of being significant? Where are you in terms of service? Yes. Where are you in making a difference in your corner of the world? And I always thought that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. In my little section of the world in Cincinnati, Ohio, can I make a difference?
Yeah.
And I started that with working with musicians and meeting another promoter and getting some ideas about things. And then I started promoting. Mm-hmm. Then working with musicians directly.
Yeah.
in that process, I realized things that I wanted to do, things that I didn't want to do anymore. But what would my evolution be in this idea of being a promoter? That's when I started to get involved with educational outreach, getting involved with nonprofits, doing booking with different entities, and expanding that idea. So when you find that sweet spot of whatever it is, that you can find accomplishment, significance, and a sense of service, how can you also continue to evolve in that?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what's so important. I think people, we've talked a lot about kind of that career, right? And how we are trained, especially in communities of color. I think it's changing now, right? There are many, many more people who are kind of moving into this entrepreneurship, especially because of what's happening in the world. But we are kind of trained to, you get up, you go to school, you get a job, you get a paycheck. And not so much that you stay there for 30 years anymore, but that's what you do. You go work for someone, not as much you do your own thing. And not a sense of you should love your job. It's more like, you better go get that paycheck, right? You better go get that money. And yes,
you better climb the ladder.
You better climb the ladder. And there is some practical stuff, right? People have bills to pay and kids to support and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to give up what you love and your idea of service for a career. You can maybe combine the two, or you can do what you have done. And so maybe tell people a little bit about how you do manage both of those things, because you are exceptional at what you do in the business world, but you found this other thing that you're also exceptional at. So how have you integrated those two?
Well, I want to say one thing about what you just mentioned about we are groomed to go down this path that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
We get up, we go to school, we get a degree, we get multiple degrees, we go to work, we climb the ladder. Yeah. There's a price to pay for all of that.
Yes.
And as people of color, especially as women of color, we both know this very well, Laura.
Yeah.
Part of that price that you pay is, you don a mask every day.
Every day.
You let a lot of stuff, roll off your shoulders and down your back.
Yes.
Despite the microaggressions and everything else that you experience.
Right.
And you keep on going.
Yes.
There's a price to pay for that. And you have to find other things that can fulfill you in the midst of, yes, I have a great job and I make all this money, but am I fulfilled and am I doing something that's making my world better? Right.
And am I defining myself by this job and this money? Because when the job and the money go away, because they might.
What am I?
What am I? Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned that lesson I started learning that lesson in my early 30s.
Yeah.
After about 10 years of being an accountant. And I knew that the arts, in some kind of way, was a pathway for me to find a better sense of accomplishment. I had already learned a lot of skills being an accountant, organization, good project management, budgeting, all of those things.
Right.
That set of skills carried over to what I was doing as a promoter.
Yeah.
And personally, this is just how my brain works. Every time I walk into a situation, the first thing I think is, how can this be better?
Right?
Right. How can I organize this better?
Yeah.
Because this looks in such disarray.
Yeah. Yes.
And what can I do to make this better? It's the first thing my brain goes to.
Yeah.
I was working with another promoter, and immediately after coming to some of his shows, was like, I think I can help this brother organize things better.
Right.
I went to him and just proposed to him, hey, let me help you with your mailing list. Let me organize the details with the musicians for their travel and backline and stuff like that.
Right.
So I kind of got my feet wet working with this person. Over the course of time, the musicians noticed I was organizing. I was doing everything.
Yes.
Everything was running like a tight ship. Everything's good. And one of them said, "You're doing all the work, and this guy that you're working with is supposed to be his show, but he's upstairs getting high."
Right, right.
You need to go do this on your own.
Yes. Yeah.
And I started thinking, can I do that?
Yeah.
And I had to believe in myself enough to say, well, yeah, I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing that I realized as a promoter, people are coming out and spending their money to have an experience.
Right. Right.
And I wanted to be able to promote in such a way that people would come, they would enjoy themselves. It was a whole experience for them.
Yeah.
So the first show that I ever promoted by myself was a celebration of my birthday. And it was several other people. We all had birthdays within the same month.
Right.
We're all Aquarians. And I called it the Aquarius Jazz Jam.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I had balloons and a cake and food, and we made it a party.
Yeah.
Everybody had a good time. It was just local musicians. And a couple weeks afterwards, I'm at the Kroger's in Hyde Park. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Standing in line at the deli. Someone comes up to me and said, "Hey, Miss Laura, I was at your thing at the Greenwich.
Yeah.
I had so much fun. It was so cool. And happy belated birthday.
Yeah.
You gonna do that again?"
See?
I said, well, yeah, I think I am.
Yeah. Well, and what's amazing about that, Laura, and what you said is a few things, and I hope you guys are listening to this. One, she took the skills that she had learned as an accountant and saw how they applied to her passion. That was number one. So just because you're doing this job that you may love, don't assume that your passion, if it's not exactly the same thing, can't be applicable. There are skills that transfer. The second thing she said was, I kept seeing these other things and I just asked, hey, let me help. Let me assist. Because she knew in doing that, she was also learning. And then she stepped out, right? And stepped out doing it in a way that was something specifically for her, but had a reach that enabled other people to see her. Because she and I talked about this. We talk about it all the time, but she and I talked about it specifically last night. You never know who's watching. You never know who's going to show up and who is going to experience you and how they're going to experience you and how that'll show up.
And I will say, good project management.
Yes.
I can't emphasize this enough.
Yes.
Good organization skills, good project management. That can transfer universally.
Yes.
I don't care what you're doing.
Right. Right.
If you have good organization skills, good project management skills, you can carry that into any arena and use it in your favor.
Yes.
And I've learned over the years, especially in trying to empower more women in jazz.
Yes.
You never know who's looking at you.
Yes.
And who sees you and thinks, I see this person doing it. Can I do this?
Yes.
When I started promoting, people talk about the Me Too stuff and harassment and inappropriate behavior. I never really had that experience as a promoter. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of African-American jazz musicians like, come on, sister, we need you.
Right. See?
It may be weird that you're an African-American woman trying to promote jazz in the Midwest and Cincinnati, Ohio. But we need you.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're going to support you so you can continue to do that.
See? Find that village.
As a result of that, the village, yes. As a result of that, I learned how to handle myself and put in my best business practice. So I was respected.
Yes.
And I don't mean to sound coarse when I say this. Musicians know They can't start to me with any nonsense.
You know what?
No.
That's not
Miss
harsh.
Laura,
That's just
Miss
clear.
Laura does not have that.
No. See,
No.
yeah.
And so I never had any kind of harassment or inappropriate behavior because I learned how to conduct myself and my business in such a way that you knew not to test me, especially if I'm writing your check.
See, you know what? So I really hope you guys are listening, because here's the thing about that. We teach people how to treat us.
Yes.
We teach people how to treat us. And if we show up half-stepping, if we show up scrambling, if we show up talking any kind of way to other people and then allowing them to do that to us, we are teaching them how we do business. So if you want to do business shady, then you act shady. If you want to do business and you're going to get shady. And if you want to do business as a professional that's really making a mark, that's making a difference, that people see and want to continue to do business with
you,
that's what you do. Because here's the thing, people will do business with you in a minute if you're going to help them, and they will be gone in a second when they find something else that is more reasonable and more professional for them. Don't get it twisted. They won't stay.
But it is important and imperative that you set the standard.
Yes.
For how you're going to practice your business.
Yes.
That gives you credibility. That sets a level of integrity that people associate with you.
Yes.
And you always maintain that no matter what. People will come try to take advantage of that.
Yes.
You'll learn your lessons, good, bad, or ugly, with that. But you can make the decision who you're going to deal with, who you're not going to deal with, if they don't respect you. But don't ever let that change the best practices that you put in place. You keep them in place. You keep that standard in place.
Yes.
And trust me, if you contain that always, maintain the credibility and the level of integrity, people will always want to work with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the same in the day job, right?
Yeah.
So if someone else is doing kind of similar to you, they got the thing that they do, right? That's the thing that they do that pays the bills, that does all this other stuff, right? That fulfills some intellectual, agility and gets some juices flowing as well. It's the same thing there.
Yes.
Because while you may not get to walk away from people as much in corporate America, right? Or even in nonprofits, right? For profit or nonprofit, you can still teach people how to treat you.
Yes.
You don't have to tolerate mistreatment, even in your job. You just don't. You may address it differently, but that again gets back to how you show up, what you tolerate, how you respond. You set your brand. You set your brand.
I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
And in the corporate world, there is a decorum and demeanor that you have to maintain.
Yeah.
And even as a promoter, there's a decorum and demeanor that I have to maintain. But I also had to learn, I'm not afraid to get in your face and curse you out less than a child of God.
Right.
If I have to.
Right. If that's the only way you're going to understand the situation.
I can go down to that level if I know that's the only way you're going to get me.
Right. Right.
It's unfortunate that I've had to do that. Not many times.
Right.
But the person understood immediately.
Yeah.
When I've had to do that.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough, my father was a police officer. Always instilled in me, hold your ground, stand your ground, don't let anyone disrespect you for any way. That's not how I raised you.
Right. Right.
There's a level to being able to convey that in any manner that you can, so people understand, and still be a professional.
Absolutely. Kendall's listening. Good morning, Kendall. And he says, what you ignore becomes more. Say that again. What you ignore becomes more, right? Yes. Yes. What you tolerate, you get.
You put that silk inside.
Yep. What you ignore becomes more. That's why y'all got to get his book. Yes. Yes. Well,
and he's going to be a guest on the future.
He is. He's going to be here. So look for October, if not sooner. So Laura, when you think about this, because I really want people to be thinking about the fact that what Laura is talking about shows up all the time. It's consistent. It is how you show up in just your personal life, those personal relationships. It's how you show up in your business life, whether that is working for someone else or working for yourself or a combination of both. It is important that you determine your brand. Now, there's another side of that that says what other people think of me is none of my business, right? So you can't go out trying to set your brand to please everyone. You still need to be in your lane, along your passion, own your own space and how you want to show up. So it's not that you're designing that to please people at all, but you need to understand the brand you're designing, the impact it has, what you are willing to tolerate and what you're willing to walk away from, because not all money is good money. Not all money is good money. And sometimes the best thing you can say is no. No. So talk a little, Laura, about, we talked about this when you were here. You know, you mentioned part of what you're doing in this passion place, really wanting to serve better and not leaving this earth, right, without having made an impact. Because that's the whole thing. We all want to make an impact. We don't want to just be here. We want to be about something. And part of that for you was this education piece, right? And getting involved with the conservatory and all of that stuff. And you talked about kind of these master classes that you're doing. Tell people a little bit about some of the key things you tell folks, especially musicians. And even if you're not a musician, this can translate into just what you're doing, about combining their passion with being clear about their business.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that I've been able to actually teach master classes. The last 5 years has just kind of exploded with me being able to do that.
Yes.
With students starting at 9 years old to college. I've done 3 master classes in Nancy, France, with same age of kids, 9 to like 22, 23. And even they understand it despite anything being lost in translation because I don't speak French.
Right.
But the first thing that I talk about in my master class is my background and how I got there and the importance of this transfer of skills.
Yes.
And that musicians as artists focused on learning their craft. They go to a conservatory and they can learn everything about how to play their instrument.
Yes.
But I also convey to them, you are the brand, you are the product, you are what you're selling. Understand how to sell yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And not only musicians I've talked to this about, I spoke to someone just another couple of days ago who is a spoken word artist, poet, said the same thing to him.
Yes.
Another young man I know that's a model, put together a portfolio so you can sell yourself because you're the product.
Yes.
Create your brand.
Yes.
They don't teach that in conservatories.
No.
About how to sell yourself. Unfortunately, artists feel like I do what I do with my craft and people are just going to find me. No.
No.
Maybe back in the 1950s.
Right.
That's how it works for jazz musicians.
Right.
It's not like that now. You have to understand how to market and sell yourself.
Yes.
Build your brand and represent yourself.
Yes.
If you learn how to do that, the next step is protecting your best interest.
Say that again.
Protecting your best interest.
Y'all catch that?
Even musicians that I know that have an agent, a manager, a booking agent, a manager, a tour manager, a PR person.
Right.
I have said, if all them people die tomorrow,
where's your
do
stuff?
You own your own,
right?
Do you own your own career?
Yes.
Because your career is yours.
Yes.
I've worked with musicians. I've done managerial stuff with musicians. And they want to hand me everything and then just sit like.
Show up with the instrument. Tell me where to go. Yeah.
I get hit by a bus tomorrow. What are you going to do?
Right.
You still need to own your career because your career is yours.
Okay, look, y'all. See, are you catching this wisdom? Okay, because this is the same conversation I have with people all the time, especially early career people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, especially early career people, because early career people actually are really masters of their own career. They may not be necessarily reasonable about their expectations, but they are definitely managing a career. Mid to senior level are still in that kind of, well, but it's my turn. I should get the promotion because they should be asking me. I can't tell you how many conversations I had about, well, why didn't they ask me to apply? Why didn't I get offered? You know what? Nobody owes you anything. You own your career. Amen. Okay? No, you own your career. And as Laura's saying too, that whole mastery piece, musicians are really good at understanding they need to master their craft, right? Master their instrument, whether that's their voice, whether that's a piano, a saxophone, whatever it is. They're really good at mastering that art, that creativity. It's the same thing if you're not a musician. If you're an accountant, if you're an HR person, if you're an underwater basket weaver, people pay and follow and support mastery. Money comes from mastery. I heard that from a coach not too long ago. Money comes from mastery. When you are an expert and a master at your craft, people will find you and they will want to work with you. But you got to own it and you got to promote it.
And when they find you, you have to be able to protect your best interest.
Yes. Yes. Spend the money.
I have said to musicians that have been doing this for decades, mm-hmm. They still don't know how to negotiate for themselves. Mm-hmm. Someone puts a contract in front of them, they'll sign it without reading it, something that I advise no one to do. Read every single thing of every contract that is presented to you.
People, don't ever, I don't care what it is, do not sign something without reading it. Even those little agreements where it says, I accept these cookies, I accept go and read the privacy policy. I stopped using a specific rideshare vendor because their policy changed around forced arbitration. And I was like, you know what? I got a choice. I'm not choosing this. Read, because you are saying, I agree when you put your John Hancock on there. Right. And if you don't understand it, go ask somebody.
Ask somebody. Yeah. I'm on both sides of this with contract negotiations. Mm-hmm. I've done it for musicians.
Yes.
And I prepare contracts myself for the things that I do.
Yes.
And I always encourage people, if I send you a contract for something that I'm contracting you for, mm-hmm. read it.
Yes.
Contact me if you have any questions.
Yep.
I have no problem with sitting down to you and explaining anything that I have in the contract.
Right.
Even with backline considerations, so most artist contracts are 3 parts. Mm-hmm. They're the basics mm-hmm. about pay.
Right.
They're the tech. Mm-hmm. And they're backline, like green room, mm-hmm. all of those kinds of things. Right. They normally break out into 3 parts. Mm-hmm. On one hand, I can be really tough and I start slashing stuff out of your contract because I'm not going to pay for it.
Right. Right.
On the other hand, if I'm representing an artist, I'm going to try to go for everything that the artist wants.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
I've learned that balance.
It's called negotiation.
In contract, it's called negotiation.
Yeah.
You have to understand that.
Yeah.
I try to, in masterclasses, I talk to people about tech stuff mm-hmm. because, again, artists are focused on learning their craft, but I'm just did a concert series, 2 actually this summer, and I had musicians not understand putting together a stage plot.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, the stage plot is what you need on stage.
Right.
To help you perform.
Yes.
It's not only I need bass amp, a standard 4-piece kit with an 18-inch bass drum. I need a Korg 88 mounted keys. Yeah. I need 2 monitors in the front, 2 microphones, mm-hmm. and I need a monitor in the back so everybody can hear each other. You know,
Yeah.
All of those things. How can you put that down?
Right.
To let all your stagehands and all your tech guys know,
right.
This is what I need, or a band to play, and then we all hear each other.
Right. And if you don't understand that, where do you go find that out?
Find that out.
Because that is a part of performance. And
Right.
so again,
so
if you're turning everything over, yeah.
I've done a little lesson in a master class
Mm-hmm.
about how you put together a stage plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn your craft, right? Learn your craft. And here's the thing too, Jerry and I talked about this really early. And she may not even remember this conversation. You know, we talk about contracts, and especially if you're doing business for yourself, whether it's a full-time or it's a side hustle, whatever, getting your business set up, getting contracts in place, getting all this stuff in place. And when I decided to start a business, I set up my LLC and I got contract ready before I even knew what I was going to do, right? I had everything ready. Now, part of that was coming out of corporate, but still, it's the way I think. Preparation, right? Get the infrastructure ready. And I remember I talked to Jerry one time and she said, I knew you were about business when you had this contract ready and it talked about your intellectual property and it talked about owning your stuff and copyrights and trademarks. And I'm like, absolutely. But it didn't dawn on me because that was just the way I think. But when we had that conversation, I said, you know what? Sometimes people are afraid to say, this is mine. Right. They're afraid to say, here's a contract for us to do business together. I love you. You're a good friend of mine, but this is business. And sometimes we get embarrassed or we get afraid to be about business. And it is all good until it's not. And then if it's not in writing, then it's all about court and arguments, and it can go on years and you can forget the friendship at that point, right? So don't be afraid to be clear. It is not unkind to be clear. It is not unkind to be clear.
But that goes back to setting the standard.
Yes.
Of how you do things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one more point that I want to talk about with what I do with master classes.
Yes.
And I thought about this for a while, and what is it that I'm talking to when I tell these certain points to students? Mm-hmm. And what I've determined is it's ethics.
Yes.
You know, we all had business ethics class in college.
Yeah.
Hopefully we all did.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that I talk about to artists that I think leans into that arena of ethics. Mm-hmm. I hear and I've heard and I continue to hear more stories about people being janky. Yes. Not only promoters, but musicians. Mm-hmm. How they treat other band members, how they conduct themselves when they're performing. And I convey the message that what you present on the bandstand is the total representation. Yes. Of not only you as a human being, but your artistry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of my dyed in the wool, I'm going to keep it forever things that I do, I won't work with you until I hear your live show first. Yes. I have no problems traveling anywhere to go hear live jazz. Mm-hmm. But I have to hear you on stage before I consider booking you to play in anything that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I have a scenario where it's a young man, very well known, that I really wanted to work with. And I heard some of his music on a couple different formats, radio, online. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to work with this brother. I went to New York to see him at the Jazz Standard. Mm-hmm. Venue's not even open anymore. I came to the second set. There was a gentleman sitting next to me with his 14-year-old son. He said, I came here because my son plays trumpet and I wanted to hear this young man. And my son loves his music. Yeah. This young man gets on stage for the second set and he said, well, the management told me that I need to stop cursing. And then he proceeds to curse. And every other word throughout the set was a curse word. Mm-hmm. And then he had to talk about this pimp that he knew in his hometown and why he wrote this song and how the prostitutes interacted with this pimp. And the gentleman next to me, after probably paying $30 for him and $20 for his son.
Mm-hmm.
Got up and left.
Yeah.
And I said, nah, I'm not gonna work with this guy.
Right.
Love his music, but what he showed me on stage
Mm-hmm.
lets me know I'm not gonna bring that garbage to anything that I do.
Right. And I tell people all the time, people will listen to what you say. They will believe what you do.
You do.
They will believe what you do. And if you guys heard, Laura said, I can hear all your music, I can do all this stuff, but I won't work with you until I see you. You get a choice with who you work with. You really do. Mm-hmm. And even, you know, people on my podcast, people on the radio show, I have a process where I talk to people first. And if it's not a match, it's not, you know, oh, you're really bad, you're a bad person. Sometimes it's just not a fit. And if it's not in your vibe, if it's not, it's okay. Because when that happens, I probably know a ton of people that is the right fit for. And so I make referrals all the time. But I don't feel the pressure to talk to everyone, to have every guest. And if I did, that says something about me and my brand and what I'm putting out there. So as Laura talks about going to see somebody, when she's putting on a show, she's putting it on for people. She's putting it on for the musicians, for the venue, but she's also putting it on as her. Mm-hmm. And so it's a representation of how she does business and with whom she is willing to do business.
And I, early in promoting, there was a lot of people that I worked with and stuff that I did because I was learning.
Yes. Yeah.
My discernment came over the course of time about what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do, mm-hmm. who I'm going to work with, who I'm not going to work with. Yeah. What is the measure that I use that I'm working with people? Mm-hmm. And I know enough musicians now all over the world where somebody approaches me and I don't know them, I can call somebody and say, who is this guy?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, I'll still go see them live, mm-hmm. but I will start vetting them with other musicians that I know. Right. And tell me, what am I dealing with? Mm-hmm. And I've had some people say, well, you know, if you hire this guy, he's going to expect you to provide 3 prostitutes after the night is over with. I'm like, no, thank you.
I'll pass. Yeah.
I'm not responsible for that.
Right.
Or you're going to have to go get the drug man for this guy after the gig. And I've had some musicians say to me, even though I've worked with them, hey, you know somebody that can bring me some weed? No, I'm not responsible for that for you.
That is not in my list of services provided.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's what people, it's like, at some level, you got to do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do. But that doesn't mean that you do things
always,
that, exactly. Yeah. You still have a value system. You still make conscious decisions around the choices you make because you are not free from the consequences of those choices. And some of those things have a long tail because people's memories are long, y'all. They may not
and the world is small.
The world is small. The world is small.
And that's part of what I consider ethics when I talk to students.
Absolutely.
You need to understand how to present yourself in the best way possible as an artist and a human being that will last long in your career if people know the level of credibility and integrity that you have about what you do.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, I have a saying that I know a bunch of jazz musicians who are great musicians, but unfortunately they're horrible human beings.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, right? And what I think we forget sometimes is that it's that scarcity mindset, right? Well, if I don't work with them, then I'll never have anybody else. And I got to take this and I got to, you know, at the end of the day, you always have a choice. And if you are standing in your purpose and in your passion, if you are standing on your values and your ethics, the stuff will come to you, right? It will come to you the way it's supposed to. And it may not come when you want it, but it will come when you need it. If you are a person who walks in that, right? Whether it's, you know, for me, it's God, whether it's God, it's the universe, it's whatever it is for you. If you just stand in that, the things your energy attracts the stuff that you need. And so if you're constantly fearful, you're going to attract the stuff that fear promotes, right? Because people will be able to take advantage of you because you're afraid to lose them. You're afraid they won't sign the contract. You give them everything in the kitchen sink because, oh, but if I don't do that, then they're not going to sign. Okay, well, That's why you always need to know, what is your worst case scenario? What is your worst case scenario? I tell people this who are working with me around career. And they're like, I don't know, I hate this job, but what if they fire me? What the first thing you need to do to alleviate some of that fear is determine and write down and get clear about your worst case scenario. How long can you be without a steady paycheck? Are you going to lose your house? Are you going to lose your car? What is your worst case, your bottom? And then you can move from that.
I give that advice to musicians. Figure out your floor.
Yes.
Your middle and your ceiling.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
What are your deal breakers, right? What are the things that it doesn't matter if they pay me $14 million? This is a deal breaker for me. Because the potential and the risk around it are not worth it. But only you can answer that question.
And the other thing that I'd like to touch on, just not only, I do this with everybody, not only the students, but anybody who asks me, you have to be cognizant about evolving.
Yes. Yes.
I got to that point after being a promoter for about 10 years. I have to evolve into something else. Yeah. There is more that I could do with this idea in jazz, but on different levels. And evolution means you have to sit with yourself and have a comprehensive moment about even your flaws and things that are being your own worst enemy.
Yes.
And those kinds of things. You have to have that discussion with yourself to be able to evolve.
Yes.
Understanding this thing gave me passion in this idea for a little bit, but now it doesn't.
Right.
And I can walk away from it and take, I always say, take my toys and go to another playground.
Right. And take that learning with you.
Right. This playground is probably going to do me better with my toys.
Right. Right.
I was in a scenario where I was involved with something for 13 years. It was no longer something that was providing fulfillment for me. Yeah. I was ready to walk away. The few people that I talked said, no, you can't do that. It's not going to be the same if you walk away. It's not the same to me now. Right. Anyway, right. I have to go.
Right. Right.
I realized I could pick up my skill set, my ideas, go somewhere else.
Right.
When I did that, the water started to rise for me.
See?
And that's how I got involved with working with nonprofits. People saw me, saw my work, asked me, that's how I got the Jazz Alive. Two of the original founding members asked me to come onto the board. I've been a board member for maybe a year or two. The president at the time said, I'm gonna step down and I'm going to ask that you be the president.
See?
I see your vision about things and your work about things, and I think you're better at being the president of Jazz Alive than I am.
See how things happen.
The next piece of that is people saw my work with Jazz Alive, and as a promoter independently with LAG Productions, and started asking me to join boards and get involved with the Conservatory here in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky University, Xavier University, other universities with educational outreach. So currently, I sit on 5 nonprofit boards,
right?
One of which I'm president. There was 3 other boards that I was on that I rolled off, that I was treasurer on all 3 of those boards, picking up my skills in finance,
right,
and taking to those organizations. One of those organizations, their treasury books were horrible. I cleaned their books up so much so that they were in a position to start applying for grants, and they had never done that before.
Yeah. See? That's the thing, guys. You gotta really listen to what she's saying. Sometimes we get in that fear And even though we don't really like it and something isn't serving us, it's comfortable. Even the pain and the discomfort is comfortable because we know it. It's the enemy we know. But if we're willing to walk away to the next thing that we can transfer our skills, to take the learning, because just because it no longer serves you doesn't mean you didn't learn something and that it wasn't valuable. So if you can take that and move somewhere else, and you've been a master of your brand, you have made sure you're showing up all the time. You don't know who's watching. I mean, look at this career here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Facebook. We
Sure.
have a young lady on Facebook. She hold on, this thing went up. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Nella Faith, and she has a snack shack business, and she works out of her home. She says, I realized early with the snack shack that I've had to turn down huge orders because of the lack of consideration of the process. I am working out of my home, and large orders have to be placed the night before. I have been slammed for this. And of course, I've received the "You Can't Support Black Business." Then she turns around, she says, in many ways, this has slowed down my business, but to maintain the quality and professionalism of what I represent, I've learned to be okay with that. And we only are a year old. Now, can I ask this question? When she said that, is it her responsibility to let people know I am a small business and I am not going to be able to produce large orders? And if you still want to do business with me, you can do business. Because on the flip side of that, I've had people who presented themselves as a large business,
Right?
but they were
weren't.
small and they could not meet my deadlines or my expectations.
Yeah, Laura, you
No,
want to go first?
she's being completely transparent
Okay.
about her capabilities
Mm-hmm.
and asking that you respect that
Absolutely.
transparency.
Absolutely.
I am not a big box. I'm a small boutique shop.
Yep.
And I give you the best quality of what I can do within these parameters of me being a small boutique shop.
Yep.
I will say this, and I've given this advice to a lady that I know who is a creative caterer here in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
She had the same scenario. She was working out of her house, limited to what she could do, but had more demand. I told her, start looking around for commissary space that you can rent. Because if your limitation is the size of your kitchen,
right?
If you just need a bigger kitchen and maybe one more person, there are spaces that will rent kitchens
Right.
for you to come and do your work in.
Exactly.
And that might give you the opportunity to go to the next level.
Yes. That's scaling up. Well,
But
and that's
full transparency, there's nothing wrong with full transparency.
No. And you should, so thank you so much for your question and your comment.
And she said she has made that known that she's a small business.
Beautiful. Because here's the thing about scaling up, and only you can make this decision, right? If what you're doing now is where you want it to be, then do that. Make that be your brand. I am small boutique. I can do orders up to this size, but if it's over this, it takes 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. People need to plan. And if they can't plan, then that is not business that you will be able to do because you're not willing to sacrifice quality for their lack of planning. As the old saying goes, emergency on poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. Okay, so that's okay. The thing you want to start thinking about, because whether you're building a career or you're building a business, it all comes down to strategy and people. If you want to build your business, then you start thinking about, okay, what size orders do I want to be able to do? Can I start exploring other vendors who are aligned with my quality, aligned with my values? Can I explore different kinds of delivery? Can I go find a partner and vet them really well, and put contracts in place that are clear? So run your business the way you want to run your business. If you decide to scale, just do it methodically and with the strategy in mind. But as Laura said, keep that transparency, because that builds your brand, because people always know what to expect from you. They always know what to expect.
And what Laura was saying is building that strategy for what you do next to get you to the next level. There's nothing wrong with vetting that whole process out and taking the time to do that.
Yes. Take your time. Take your time.
So that you can still keep your brand and integrity in place and your transparency in place.
Now, I want to ask you one question, or was there another question, Jerry, before I asked Laura?
She just said, thank you. One more question about
Sure.
Musicians and singers. Pay scale. I know a lot when I do productions and things of that nature, people will come to you and they have this high ranking pay scale. And what most promoters want to know is, can you sell tickets? Can your name bring in the people? How do musicians handle their pay scale? Let's say nobody knows their name right now. How do they make their own pay scale?
Well, I get a lot of questions to me about that. What should I, and I talk about this in masterclass, how to set your pay scale. If you're a musician who's starting out, you have no marquee value, which we're talking about, how people recognize your name.
Yeah.
If you have no marquee value, it's hard to justify that you're going to sell tickets. One piece of advice that I give you musicians is, if you have an opportunity to add somebody to your ensemble that does have marquee recognition, that helps.
Yes.
Actually, the first musician that I ever managed, I did that with him. I brought in someone who was internationally known to come and be a guest in his ensemble in an event that I did, because I knew I had local marquee value with the person that I worked with, but I had larger marquee value with the internationally known jazz musician. That's one aspect that you can do to help, because the people that are coming to see that other person, they find out about you.
Yes.
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 Ask other musicians in your area, because pay scale is different in geographic areas.
Right.
What is considered the base? And sometimes musicians unions in the areas set what is scale,
Right.
pay, you know. But I would ask other musicians, what do you expect? You have to find a balance. Again, floor, mid,
Yes.
ceiling.
Yes. What's your deal breaker?
Because what you don't want to do is come to a promoter or presenter with some outlandish pay and not be able to negotiate
Right.
and demand that you get paid on this level.
Mm-hmm.
What you do in that idea is you eliminate the possibility to build a relationship.
Right.
And then they're not going to call you to work with you anymore.
Right. Right.
You know?
Right.
And I've had some people come to me 5 years into a career and ask money like they're George Benson.
Right.
No.
Love you, mean it. That's not happening. Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we go.
And wait,
Yeah, go ahead.
and even George Benson has asked for some prices, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've vetted him before.
Yeah. Some people, it's like, wait a minute, you know, and you have to know what you're asking for too, right? You have to know where you're trying to go. So not only your own prices for the market, but also the event. Is it a nonprofit event? Is it a fundraising event? Is it, you know, if it's fundraising, can you do something different with your salary because you get something else, right? Like in-kind services, or you get some other kind of free promotion, or that's why you really think about, as Laura said, what is your bottom and what does that look like? Can it consist of multiple things? What is the value of the visibility to you? And is that visibility worth a little less in actual pricing or not?
Laura, when you said, is it a nonprofit event? Because I've had people saying, we need you to come do this for us, but we're nonprofit, we're not selling tickets. But is that my concern as the person they're booking?
No. And when I say if it's a nonprofit event, that doesn't always mean it's free.
Yeah.
Because you get to decide when you want to give away your services. Because you don't have to. You get to decide when you want to say, you know what, I'm just going to do this pro bono this time because here's what's happening. Here's what I ask. I want a referral. I want a testimonial. I want a poster, or, you know, I want to do a giveaway. I want to, a lot of speaking engagements, instead of getting paid, you'll say, okay, I won't get paid, but I need you to allow me to sell from the stage, right? So there are other things you can do, because nonprofit doesn't always mean no money.
Right.
And you want to pay attention to not only, we talked about this, active listening, what people say, but what they don't say.
And what Laura is referring to is sometimes compensation is a package.
Yes.
It's not all just, I'm gonna cut you a check for X amount of dollars.
Right.
I may not be able to pay you at this rate that you want, but I'm gonna let you sell your product. I'm gonna feed you.
Right.
And I can also say, next time I do something in a better scenario monetarily, I'm going to hire you.
Right. And keep the connection up, right?
Yes.
So if there's somebody you really want and you can't really afford them, see if you can put some kind of package together that may be attractive, and then stay connected. Thank you so much for showing up. Here's the kind of response that we get, right? Because they can use that. Here's what people said about the event. Here's how we were able to promote it. Here's all the stuff we got that you can use on your website or your whatever, right? And stay in touch with them, because then the next time, hey, we got this thing. I actually have money to pay. I would love for you to be able to come back because it was such a great experience. But you build relationships. You build
Building the relationships is key. And I've had scenarios where, I couldn't pay musicians what they wanted, internationally known musicians. But they were like, hey, can you get me bingo tickets for the game this weekend?
Right.
Or can you get me tickets to the Western Southern Open?
Right.
Tennis tournament? I've been able to do that and decrease the compensation.
Absolutely.
But we built a relationship.
Yes.
And then when I was able to hire them and pay them what they wanted, I did.
Exactly. Can you do hotel? Can you cover hotel and flight or something? There's always negotiation, and this goes true for your career as well and your company as well. When they start talking salary, you want to pay attention to total compensation. Now that doesn't mean you let them just lowball you. That's not what I'm saying. You need to understand what, again, your floor is, but look at everything else. What are the benefits? What do they cost? Right? What does the bonus package look like, even though it's not always guaranteed? What does the vacation look like? What is important to you? And look at the entire package before you make that decision. Now, Laura, we're right at an hour, but I want people to understand this. You are a Black woman promoting jazz. You're a unicorn. So give people like a real quick why jazz and what you want people to know to appreciate the art form.
My parents instilled in me a love of jazz from when I'm probably a toddler. But what I also want people to understand is jazz is our history.
Yes.
It's the history of our culture. Born in Congo Square for people who were not free,
yes,
but wanted to celebrate the traditions of their homeland.
Yes.
Combining those traditions of rhythm with European music ideas and sensibilities. That's where jazz comes from. It is our history. Not only did I learn to appreciate it growing up, I learned that it was our history. Our culture needs to remember that.
Yes, I love
It
it.
is the original American art form that we contributed, that is revered all over the world. And I witnessed that myself when I had a 14-year-old boy in Nancy, France, tell me his favorite tenor saxophonist was Dexter Gordon.
Wow. See?
And I'm looking at him, I was like, what you know about this?
Right.
He said, oh, Miss Laura, I love Ornette Coleman and Dexter Gordon and Thelonious Monk and Dizzy Gillespie, 14-year-old young Caucasian high school student in Nancy, France, walking me back to my hotel because I didn't know where I was going. And he wanted to talk to me and tell me how much he loved the veterans, the traditions, the masters of this art form, who are all African-American men.
Yes.
This is our culture. This is our history.
I love
and
it.
we need to learn about it, preserve it, and care for it, and perpetuate it, and support it always.
I love it. I love it. Laura, this has been so awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
We need to make this an annual thing.
Right? I love it. I appreciate you so much spending this time because I know you got a day job. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being a part of the show. Everybody, I will be posting her bio and how you can get in touch with her, all of that stuff. And actually the replay will be up on, it'll be on my Facebook page, but it'll also be up on my YouTube channel. It's going to be on Jerry's page as well, because she does the lives on hers as well. So you will be able to listen to it again. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this. Laura, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll catch you next time. Bye.